Yo, what's going on, and welcome back to another Genshin Impact video. And today we are going to be test running Child or Tartaglia. Turns out that I did not do a test run on him the first time through. We did try and summon for him, but obviously that didn't work out. I think he also had Diona on his banner, so I think we got a Diona and then just called it good after that. But anyways, as usual, we're gonna start with going through Tartaglia's abilities. Now, he's got quite a lot going on here, so we'll try and go through it as quickly but as descriptively as possible. Now, Tartaglia is a bow character, so his normal auto attacks are just going to be 6 consecutive bow shots. His charge attack is going to imbue his attack, or his aim shot, with Hydro, and he's going to have a special effect on his charge attack, which once you fully charge it, Hydro will apply a Riptide status. Now, Riptide is going to make all of his abilities do something, essentially. So, Riptide is kind of like a mark on the enemy, and we're going to go ahead and talk about it right here. So, Riptide, whenever someone gets affected by it, they take AoE Hydro damage. And then when he attacks someone with Riptide on them, it will do different things. So first of all, we have a Riptide Flash, which when you fully charge another aim shot, it is going to deal consecutive bouts of AoE damage. And you can only do this every 0.7 seconds, but I don't think you can charge an aim shot that quickly. So here we have the flash damage, which is 12.4% times 3. So that's happening 3 times, plus the damage from your fully charged aim shot. So you have all of that on top of each other. Now, Riptide Burst, whenever you defeat an enemy with Riptide on them, creates a Hydro Burst that inflicts the Riptide status on nearby opponents. So this makes him pretty decent at spreading around the Riptide to large amounts of enemies so you can kill more people. Now, moving on to his next skill, which is a pretty cool skill, and it was kind of like before Hu Tao did what Hu Tao does with her skill, Tartaglia did what he does. And now he's normally a bow character, but when you activate his skill, it's going to change all of his auto attacks into Hydro, but it's also going to give him melee weapons that are made of water. So this is his melee stance, and he's going to have his normal and charge attacks converted into Hydro, and it can't be overridden by anything, so no Bennett, no Chongyun can override Tartaglia's Hydro damage. So here, normal attacks, he's going to have a 6-hit combo, again, just like with the bow, except it'll look different because now it's melee. And then charge attack, he's going to consume his stamina to unleash a cross slash with Hydro, pretty basic for a melee character. Riptide Slash, hitting an opponent affected by Riptide. So unlike the first one where we had Riptide Flash, we now have Riptide Slash. You got to keep track of all of these. Hitting an opponent affected by Riptide with melee unleashes a Riptide Slash that deals AoE Hydro damage. Damage dealt in this way is skill damage. So each of the different Riptide effects are going to be based off of what they were hit by. So the first one, Riptide Flash, is counted as auto attack damage. This one is counted as elemental skill damage, which can be important to know if you're buffing a certain type of damage with other methods like artifacts or other characters' abilities. After 30 seconds, this ability will activate again and it will end, but it's also important to know that the cooldown of this ability is based on how long you stay in the Foul Legacy Raging Tide stance. So if you can keep it to a certain amount, then your cooldown is going to be shorter, which is going to be more effective for you, unless you have some constellations which can change it around a little bit. But generally, from what I know with Tartaglia, you don't want to just sit there for 30 seconds in your Foul Legacy transformation. You want to switch out around 12 to 15 seconds. But we'll demonstrate that a little bit later when we actually get into using his abilities. Now, when we move on to his Elemental Burst, again, he's going to do different things depending on the situation. Here, he has a different one for if he's in ranged or melee, and it also has a Riptide effect. So when he's in ranged, he's going to fire a Hydro imbued magic arrow. It's going to deal AoE Hydro and apply the Riptide status, plus the ranged version is going to give him back some of his energy. The energy that he gets back is 20 and the total cost is 60, so you get a third of it back if you use it in ranged. But as far as I know, you don't really want to use it in range. Now, moving on to his melee stance, he's going to perform a slash with a large AoE and deal massive Hydro damage, and this is going to trigger Riptide Blast. Now, Riptide Blast is the final iteration of Riptide effects, and when the obliterating waters hit an opponent affected by Riptide, it clears their Riptide status and triggers a Hydro explosion that deals AoE Hydro damage. This is considered elemental burst damage. So again, if you have something that boosts elemental burst damage, the Riptide Blast is going to be boosted by this as well, not just the large slash that he's doing. So, moving on to his passive talents. His first passive talent is just going to extend the duration of the Riptides that he puts by 8 seconds. I believe at base they last 10 seconds down here. So 18 seconds is how long they'll last, so you'll just have longer to trigger them. Plus you'll probably be able to trigger them more. I believe they have cooldowns on them. I'm not exactly sure where you find out the cooldowns, but like each proc I believe has its own separate cooldown. So you can't just like auto attack and keep proccing it over and over and over. You auto attack, it'll proc on the first one, and then it won't proc for like another few seconds again. So moving on to his other passive talent, while he's in his melee stance, if he crits, then his normal and charge attacks will apply the Riptide status. So this makes it so you no longer have to do fully charged aim shots to get Riptide status. You can get it from just his talent, which will just increase his damage, but it's going to mean that you want really high crit on him because otherwise you won't get this effect very often. So the more crit you have, the more likely you are to get this effect, the more likely you are to do more damage. Now his final passive talent is really interesting. It increases your own party member's normal attack level by 1. Now I can't remember if this affects himself, but we'll probably be able to see when we actually get in and we can look at his stats. But it seems really interesting because it's the only way right now for characters to get above level 10 on their normal attack. So he can be really valuable, and even if you're not going all the way up to 10, it's just free damage for everyone who's in your party, especially if you're not using Tartaglia as a main DPS. Then the other characters who are your main DPS will be getting this extra damage. Now, moving on to his constellations. His constellations are a little bit simpler, except for number 4, but whatever. So his first one is going to decrease the cooldown of his Foul Legacy transformation. So as we talked about earlier, the longer you stay in the transformation, the longer the cooldown is. This is just going to make it 20% less. So I believe this is where the change from 12 to 15 seconds happens. If you don't have this, you only want to stay in for 12 seconds. If you do have this, I think you can go to 15 seconds because that's an extra 20% on the time that you're staying in. Now, constellation number 2, when opponents affected by Riptide are defeated, Tartaglia regenerates 4 elemental energy. This is really good, especially if you have a high crit with that talent. Then you'll be putting Riptide on everyone always, so anyone that you defeat is going to give you 4 energy. It doesn't appear to have a cooldown, so this is going to be a really good way to generate a whole bunch of energy in the middle of a lot of enemies. Now, number 3 is going to increase the transformation level. Number 4 is just a really long paragraph. In melee stance, his slash is now going to be triggered every 4 seconds. That's pretty much it, right? It's pretty much just a long-winded way of saying anyone with Riptide on them while he's in his melee stance is constantly going to have the Riptide slash triggered on them. Every 4 seconds it's going to trigger on them. So you want to make sure that you keep applying Riptide to them. But it also says down here in this large paragraph that you can still trigger Riptide slash with your auto attacks, and those two don't care about each other's cooldowns. This one's still going to trigger every 4 seconds no matter what, and the other one is still going to have its own internal cooldown as well. Now, it is important to note that once you have this constellation, the Riptide slash is constantly going to be dealing water or hydro damage to the character affected by Riptide, which means it can be difficult to actually use Tartaglia with Constellation 4 in a Vaporize comp, because now all of a sudden you have a fairly low damage hit in the Riptide Slash that's constantly eating up other people's elemental effects that you're putting on. So say you hit someone with a fire attack from Hu Tao, then if Tartaglia comes out and he already has marked them and you put him into his melee stance, and then the Riptide Slash goes off before you've auto-attacked them or gotten to do anything like use your Elemental Burst, then the Riptide Slash is eating up that Pyro mark that you've put on the enemy for a fairly low damage proc, because Vaporized procs are based off of the damage of the hit that applied it, and Riptide Slash just being a small damage augmentation instead of like an actual attack is going to have a low Vaporize effect. So keep that in mind. If you have Constellation 4, Elemental Mastery comps are going to be a little bit harder to do with Child. But moving on to Constellation 5, going to increase his Elemental Burst level. And Constellation 6, while he's in melee stance, the cooldown of Foul Legacy is reset if you use his Elemental Burst. So this means that you don't have to be careful about using him for only a specific amount of time. You can now keep him out the full 30 seconds. As long as you cast your Elemental Burst in that 30 seconds, then when the 30 seconds runs out, your elemental skill will be back up because its cooldown will have been reset. So that one can be really good for permanently keeping him in that melee state. But there are definitely ways to play around it without that constellation, which we'll show off here. Now, first we wanted to look at his actual talents to see if his passive works on himself. I feel like it probably does, but let's see. It does. Okay, so you can see here he gets talent +1. He's already at 9. So who do we have supporting him? We have Kaya, huh? Interesting. All right. Let's go ahead and get into this and we can show how the cooldowns and stuff work. So first we got some Pyro Slimes. We're going to go ahead and get some charge attacks in here. You can see Riptide is on that guy. It doesn't do anything without that constellation that constantly procs it. So he's just going to sit there with Riptide on him until it would run out. Or we can proc Riptide like that with another fully aimed or fully charged aim shot. Now moving into his basic attacks, nothing too special here.
No time to lose.
Oh. I dodged the wrong way, huh? I didn't mean to go that direction, to be fair. Wait, that's just a challenge fail? Alright, okay. Okay, let's not do that again. So, now let's go ahead, go into melee stance. So, now we have like blades and stuff made of water. You could see that his damage gets pretty crazy. He has that talent and he probably has quite a bit of... I can't move. Probably has quite a bit of crit rate just to make sure that he's actually applying those slashes. And you can see there we ended it and we have a 20-second cooldown. So we're going to need to be a little bit better about when we actually use it to... or how long we use it for to make sure that we have shorter cooldowns. So, we're about to have it up again, but why don't we get a Riptide going on this big guy, and then we'll go into the transformation. We didn't hit anyone with that, huh? So we ended it there at around 10 seconds, so we only had a 10-second cooldown this time.
Dodge this.
Let's go ahead and unleash on these guys once this guy fires his arrow. Could do the cross slash. Ooh, the cross slash looks really cool. So there we actually hit people with the ultimate. We'll go ahead and end that ability. We'll put Riptide on this guy. Can we get another elemental burst? I don't think so. We're not going to be able to get another elemental burst just off of basic attacking this guy. But you can see every time we aim shot him while he has that Riptide on there, it's like exploding and dealing a whole bunch of instances of damage. And that's kind of one of his big mechanics is just exploiting what his Riptide actually does and combining it to like get the most effectiveness. So you want to use the aim shots when you need to. And the cool thing about Tartaglia is unlike Hu Tao, which Hu Tao, you kind of like the game tells you how to play her and is like, while you're in this stance, you deal damage, right, as Hu Tao. And then when it runs out, then you kind of switch out as Hu Tao. You go to someone else because Hu Tao's not dealing a whole bunch of damage, depending on how you build her. But she's probably not dealing that much while she's not in her stance. Tartaglia, on the other hand, while he is out, he can actually just run around and do charge aim shots to apply more Riptide status to people, proc the Riptide status that he had already placed. If you have your Elemental Burst up, we didn't actually do the ranged one, but we'll go ahead and check out the ranged one. And that's going to give back 20 of his energy. So if you want, you could, in theory, also use that while you're waiting for your melee stance to come back up. But I feel like he has a very unique playstyle in that way. And you could see that he's got a buff around him. Now, I'm not exactly sure where this buff comes from. It might be, is it from the bow? No, I don't think it's from the bow. Oh, it's from the Heart of Depth. So whenever he uses an elemental skill, it is going to boost his auto attack and charge attack damage for 15 seconds. Now this could be really important because you see when we activate it, we got the arrows around us. So for the next 15 seconds, we can do extra damage. But the thing that I was saying before is turning off his skill also counts as activating it. So now we have increased charge attack damage again for another 15 seconds, which is about how long that skill is going to be on cooldown. So with this Heart of Depth, we can actually have a permanent 30% damage up, and we can make use of it with our aim shots, and then we can make use of it with our auto attacks in the Foul Legacy transformation. But yeah, that's pretty much all there is to Child. I believe that we are going to be looking at Rosaria next, and then we will probably summon on the Child banner a little bit. I don't expect to get Child, but I do want to try and get a Rosaria at least, but we'll see how that goes. I do want to save some summons for what's coming in the next patch, but either way, that's going to do it for this one. Hopefully you found this useful. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Maybe you learned a little bit about Child. I know that Child is a really powerful character. I just don't know that I can afford to summon him plus the characters that are coming soon. So I might have to pass, but there is always the chance that maybe we get him like super early in our summoning session or something, and then I don't feel too bad about it. But either way, that's going to do it for this one. Hopefully you enjoyed, and I will see you next time.